In this video, we'll be talking about some instances where cops got completely owned in court. So without any further delay, let's get down to it. We begin with the court hearing of a now former police officer, Eric Fritz, who you can see in the presence of his lawyer. In July 2016, Officer Fritz pulled over a car, arresting the driver, and allegedly took the passenger, a woman named Melissa McMillan, to a hotel where he assaulted her on 3 separate occasions. Here, the judge was informing him that he could be facing a maximum penalty of 15 years in prison. Then Melissa started sharing her horrific experience with Officer Fritz, accusing him of using her intoxicated state as an opportunity to have intimate relations with her. She added that her life had forever been changed, and every aspect of her life had been affected by that experience. She also said that her friends and family, including her children, had to witness her going through hell because of what he did to her. As a result, she now can't see a police vehicle without feeling fear or being reminded of what happened to her. The poor woman then expressed remorse because she had too much to drink and consequently put herself in a vulnerable position. She also said that she couldn't remember leaving the bar that night. Melissa expressed deep regret that she didn't know that the driver of the car was also intoxicated, which ultimately led them to being pulled over by Officer Fritz.
Me, who knew I was highly intoxicated, yet you used that as a selfish opportunity. My life has been forever changed. Every aspect of my life has been affected. My children have struggled. My friends, family, and loved ones have watched me through a year of hell. I can't see a police vehicle without feeling fear or be reminded of what happened. I made a poor decision to have too many drinks, putting myself in a vulnerable position.
When the judge asked Officer Fritz to add something, he started apologizing to everyone, including his friends, family, and co-workers. And in the end, he even apologized to Melissa. But here's the thing. He only apologized for offering to take her to a hotel room, and he just ignored everything else, saying that he never should have put her in that situation.
Mr. Fritz, anything you wish to tell me?
Yes, Your Honor. First, I'd like to apologize to my friends and family who I've actually let down. I'd also like to apologize for my coworkers who I embarrassed by my decisions. I'd also like to apologize to the people of Cobra Township for my actions that night. And I absolutely would like to apologize for Ms. McMillan for my horrific decision of offering her a hotel room. I never should offer her a hotel room in the first place. It never should happen. I never should put her in that situation.
The judge then proceeded to remind him of his oath to protect, serve, and uphold to the highest ethical standards. She called him out for exploiting and preying upon a woman who was entirely helpless due to her intoxicated state. She also accused him of using his badge and the authority and power it granted him as means to implement his criminality.
You took a law enforcement oath of honor to protect and to serve and to uphold the highest of ethical standards. Instead, you preyed upon and exploited and damaged a woman who was entirely helpless due to excessive intoxication. Even more disturbing to this court is the fact that you used your badge and the authority and power it grants you as a means to implement your criminality. You betrayed her, you betrayed your fellow officers, you betrayed mightily the public trust all of us had.
The video ends with the judge telling him that he betrayed everyone by doing what he did. Officer Fritz had only been an officer in Covert Township for 2 months prior to this incident. After he was charged, he immediately resigned. He pleaded no contest to a lesser charge of unlawful imprisonment, while the other 2 charges of first-degree criminal sexual conduct and kidnapping were dropped. Officer Fritz was eventually sentenced to 1 year in jail and 5 years of probation. As for Melissa McMillan, she was awarded more than $100,000 following a settlement finalized on January 30th, 2020 in federal court. Here we have a judge informing everyone in the courtroom that the jury had reached a verdict in the case against former Fort Worth, Texas police officer Aaron Dean. It should be noted that the jury deliberated for about 13 hours before they handed down the sentence. Once the jury entered the courtroom, they confirmed that they reached a verdict. The judge then read their statement, saying that they found Aaron Dean guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of manslaughter in the fatal shooting of a Tatiana Jefferson who had been playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew. The jury sentenced him to 11 years, 10 months, and 12 days in prison. After reading that he ordered everyone to be seated, he went on to ask each individual juror if that verdict was their individual verdict, and they all confirmed that it was.
Verdict reads, we the jury, having found the defendant Aaron York Dean guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of manslaughter, assess his punishment and confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 11 years, 10 months, 12 days. They do not assess a fine. And it is signed by the presiding juror. You may be seated. Thank you very much. Juror number 1, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 3, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 4, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 6, is this your verdict?
The judge then spoke to Aaron Dean and told him that he'd be transferred to the director of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve his sentence. He also said that he would be awarded credit for all the time he spent in custody, which would be the period from the day of his arrest to the day of his sentencing. The judge also informed him that he has the right to appeal the jury's decision. It should be noted that the jury rejected a murder charge that could have sent Dean to prison for life. During the trial, Dean's lawyer said that his client was acting in self-defense when he shot Jefferson after he saw a weapon in the window. And Dean himself said that he thought he was responding to a scene of burglary when he saw an armed figure in a window of Jefferson's home.
Mr. Dean, it's the jury having found you guilty of the offense of manslaughter and assessed this punishment. It's the order of the court you be remanded to the custody of the sheriff, be delivered to the director of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve your sentence as required by law. You will receive credit for all the time that you have served in custody on this case from the date of your original arrest up until today, which would be the date of sentence. You have the right to appeal the jury's decision. You do so by giving written notice of appeal to the Second Court of Appeals here in Fort Worth within 30 days.
Rapper YNW Melly's trial revealed that the lead investigator in the case, Detective Mark Moretti, threatened Melly's manager, Jameson Francois, with deportation and imprisonment following the shooting. The following footage shows the defense attorney cross-examining the detective. He first asked him if he threatened to have the man federally indicted, and the detective confirmed it. Then he went on to ask him if he told the man that he would not see his kids for a couple of years. The detective wasn't certain if that was the case, so the defense attorney approached him and showed him something in the case file.
Let's go to Patrick Deloach and see if I can refresh your recollection. May I approach?
Yes, sir. What are you approaching with?
A statement and his words.
Whose statement?
Patrick Deloach with Detective Moretti and
Thank you.
Christine Bradley present.
Thank you.
The defense attorney then proceeded with questions asking if the detective had threatened Jameson Francois that he would be deported despite the fact that he has been living in the US since he was 5 years old. The attorney was clearly very angry at the detective, so he had to calm himself down and apologize to the judge for his tone. Then he asked the detective if he said to the man that he wouldn't get fed or receive medicine, to which Moretti replied that he doesn't know anything about that conversation.
Did you in fact threaten Jameson Francois?
The same answer, sir. We advised him that lying to us would result in their arrest.
Did you in fact tell him he would be deported to Haiti?
Yes.
Did you in fact tell him that despite the fact that he has lived in this country since he's been 5 years old, he would be deported to... These are his words. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Restate the question.
Did you, as a trained investigator, threaten Jameson Francois to be deported to Haiti, even though he's been in this country since 5 years?
Yes, sir.
Did you in fact threaten that he would not get fed and get any medicine in the Haitian jails?
I don't know about that in the conversations.
The video ends there, so we don't know what happened, but it's safe to say that by the end of that hearing, the detective got completely owned by the fierce defense attorney. Rapper YNW Melly has been charged with 2 counts of murder in the first degree. The victims were 2 of his YNW crew members, Christopher YNW Juvie Thomas Jr., Anthony YNW Sackchaser. If convicted, he faces the potential of a death sentence. Here we are at the March 2023 sentencing hearing of a Euclid police officer, Michael Amiot, who was convicted in July 2022 on a charge connected with a traffic stop involving Richard Hubbard dating back to August of 2017. You can hear the judge declaring that the court would impose a sentence of 90 days and would require him to pay a fine of $1,000 plus the court costs. But then the judge said that the court would suspend the 90-day sentence and place him on non-reporting community control for a period of 1 year. But if he violated during that year, the court would retain the ability to impose the sentence. The judge was then asked to explain the charges, and he said that Mr. Hubbard's rights were violated and the officer used his authority to do that, but that the court would use the assault as opposed to the violation of civil rights given the length of time involved. The judge then said that he was still troubled by the fact that the officer didn't address Mr. Hubbard, and he went on to scold the officer because of that.
The court at this time will impose a sentence of 90 days. Require you to pay a fine of $1,000 and will require you to pay the court costs. In addition, the court will suspend the sentence of 90 days, place you on non-reporting community control for a period of 1 year. If you violate during that 1 year, then the court will retain the ability to impose the sentence. While Mr. Hubbard's rights were violated, and the officer, as an officer, he used his authority to do that. However, given the length of time involved here, the court will use the assault as opposed to the violation of civil rights. I'm still troubled by the fact that you did not address Mr. Hubbard.
I can address it.
I know that's all right, Your Honor.
No, it's not all right.
I don't need it.
You do need it.
Then he gave some advice to Mr. Hubbard, saying that he needs to move on and not let that incident handicap him, because if he let that happen, then that would mean the officer still had control over him.
I'm telling you, you need to move on. Not easy. Life is not easy. But as long as you let that handicap you, he has control.
To give a little bit of context, Officer Amiot was going to arrest Mr. Hubbard because he didn't have a driver's license. According to Hubbard, it wasn't long until the officer started using excessive force by hitting him while he was on the ground. The officer was first suspended for 45 days and then fired, but he was reinstated a year later. He was then arrested and charged August 2019, but his trial was delayed for 2 years. Now, before we delve into the details of this court hearing, let's take a look at the backstory. In June 2012, a man by the name of Marcus Jetter was stopped and accused of grabbing an officer's gun, eluding and resisting arrest. The 2 officers that were involved then submitted what would later turn out to be false police reports about Jetter's arrest. Jetter faced 5 years in prison because of this, but luckily for him, the dashcam footage later revealed that Jetter had his hands up after officers broke his car window and dragged him from the vehicle. The following footage shows one of those officers, Sean Corder, addressing the court, hoping that his sentence would be minimized. He talked about his children, of course, saying that he doesn't want them to be emotionally scarred because of him. He added that he already missed Christmas and his daughter's birthday and explained how he hadn't been away from them for more than a day. He begged for the minimum sentence so he could return and support his family.
I love my children more than anything in the world. And I know they need me. I don't want them to have to suffer, switch schools, lose friends, lose the house that they're raised in. I don't want them to become emotionally scarred from me being away. You know? Sorry, a lot of that stuff I hadn't heard from my wife, and it kind of hit me. I haven't been away from my kids for more than a day. And since being incarcerated, I miss Christmas, I miss my little Sabrina's birthday, missed my Kylie the Rose ride at bicycle, which I was practicing with her. And I also missed a lot of Boy Scout events for my son Connor. I love my kids and my family, Your Honor, and if you could please impose the least possible sentence so I can get back to supporting and raising my family.
After he was done with that, Marcus Jeter reminded the officer of the oath he took to always tell the truth. He added that Mr. Corder had his chance to tell the truth, and yet he chose to lie by saying that he jumped out the back window and resisted him.
As a man of the law, there's an oath that they take, and it's to tell the truth. And in this situation, there was time given for Mr. Corder to tell the truth. He chose to say that I jumped out the back window. He chose to say that I pulled off on him. He chose to say that I resisted. He had a choice. I'm not saying that that messes his character up. I'm not saying that he's not a good guy. I'm just saying that in a situation like this where he has an obligation, a moral obligation to tell the truth, he chose not to.
Corder was eventually sentenced to 5 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The other cop involved in the incident, Orlando Trinidad, was also sentenced to 5 years in prison. The two officers tried to ruin Marcus Jeter's life by submitting false reports, but they got instant karma instead.